PYAASA, Guru Dutt. It's a surprise in terms of its genre and in terms of the period it was made. This is 1957. Guru Dutt was an Indian filmmaker who had had a project like this in his mind for 4 years before he actually came to make it. But part of the reason he wanted to make PYAASA was because his all-time favourite filmmaker, the one who had influenced him more than anybody else, was Orson Welles. So in order to be able to put on screen the kind of films that he had loved up until then, and I think the particular influence on him was probably Touch of Evil, he decided that he would come up with a story which would allow for poetry, and particularly a kind of visual poetry, but also to make a very dark, very gritty view of India in the late 1950s. Corruption was the main watchword of that society. There's no two ways about it. Money and power were the only things that actually made any difference to people. And in making PYAASA, in the 4 years he took to plan it out, he was trying to work out how best to tell that story without it either seeming like a polemic, so that it was still an entertainment first and foremost, but which also touched on the spirituality of the people, and not just the people in charge, but the people who were actually having to deal with everyday life at its grittiest. The person he brought on board in order to make that happen was the poet Sahir Ludhianvi. Sorry, I'm not that great on Indian names, but he was a left-wing poet who had actually got into trouble with the government for his writing. But in this particular instance, Guru Dutt said, right, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, if you have anything you want to make in the way of criticism of this country, this is the way to do it now. Because we will then set that to music. So this film is kind of erroneously described as a Bollywood movie. Bollywood is first and foremost about entertainment. This was closer to a British director like Ken Loach, who takes film into the streets and actually makes stories that real people will go and see and will recognize themselves in. However, it is also a poetic masterpiece. The music's fantastic, the poems are superb. And the reason why Guru Dutt made such a great film, it's because it is his story. It is a poet who nobody wants to read their poems. It's a man who falls in love with a prostitute. It is all the things that had happened to him that he wanted to put on film. And hovering over it, as I say, is the ghost of Orson Welles. If you haven't seen this film before, I really do envy you. Ladies and gentlemen, Guru Dutt's PYAASA.